Okay, so I'm back with this Genesis board that wasn't working. It's been some time, but I was waiting on some stuff to arrive. One of which was a new oscilloscope, and it's not the greatest thing in the world, but it's going to be a lot better than what I currently have. So I was waiting on that. But while I was waiting on that, I was just kind of going through and troubleshooting the board a little bit with what I had, and unfortunately, I kind of messed up. I lifted the board up and wasn't paying attention, and the positive clip kind of came off, and as you see, it just raked down the board and sent 12 volts or 9 volts, whichever it was set to, through just random stuff on the board. So not sure if this one's going to be even worth saving, because God only knows how many chips we blew. So, but let's find out. This might become a parts board, but being that it's a VA3, I'd like to try and save it because this is one of the better versions. I also have done a lot of research since the first video and know a lot more about these boards. And in the amount of time since the first video was put out, I actually ordered a lot more broken Segas. I got this one working, and I've been using this one, and I was able to actually do the AV mod. And I'm going to release a video on how to do that. I'm still working on modifying this one, putting some other mods in it, but this one actually works really well. So let's take a look at this one and see if we can what we can come up with. All right, so first things first, let's get the scope going. Now, the software that this scope came with is utter garbage. I've been playing around with what is it, OpenHand Tech, which is like an open source software, but it also has its own issues. So and plus I'm still learning how to use it. So we'll just make do and get by for now. First thing I want to do is check the Z80 processor. So it's saying that pin 11 should be 5 volts. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and 11. And we have 5 volts there. So at least it's getting power. Now it says clock in is pin 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I just want to see, is there anything going into it if we're... Getting nothing on that. Just a lot of interference, it looks like. So that's not good. All right, let me check real quick. All right, so let's check the 68K. I don't have... VCC should be 14, and clock in should be 15. So we have 5 volts going in, and it's got no clock either. So let me try something just to see, to make sure it's not the fact that it needs to have a game installed. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 12, 13 is 5 volts, 14, 15, and there's nothing on 15, which means it's not getting a clock signal. Okay. So let's take, make sure this doesn't unclip again. So this is the oscillator, and this is what supplies a clock signal to everything on the board. And I want to make sure that this all stays connected. So let's turn this back on. We'll see if there's a clock signal actually getting out of that. And I don't have the pin out for this, so all right, so that looks like it's power in because that's 5 volts. That's nothing. And that's the same thing we were getting on the CPU. That should be much higher. So the oscillator's not outputting a clock signal. Well, that's one problem. So let me unsolder this from the board and power it independently and make sure that something isn't shorting that out. So I have actually a parts board, and this is a VA0, so it's no real loss. The VA0s weren't the greatest boards in the world. But it has the same, maybe not exactly, but it has the same frequency oscillator on here. So let's pull this one off, and I'm going to do the same thing. I'm just going to pull this off. I'm actually just going to replace it rather than power this independently, because I don't know the exact pin out. Let's just pull this off and just see what happens. Worst case scenario, I'm just killing 2 oscillators if there is a problem. You know what, before I do anything, let me just clean this up a little bit. Okay, let's fire it up and see what happens. And so here goes nothing. Let's give this a shot. We got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. We got power going to it. 13, 14, and 15. Oh, we got clock. So let me plug this in. And if that's all it was, well, that would be fantastic. No, I still got no video output. I just got a black screen. And there's no sense in putting that up on the screen because it's really not going to see anything. But at least we got... Oh, and the chips are actually getting warm, like they're actually doing something now. And I'm just using the RF output to a TV I have sitting right here. I do have an AV in on the computer, and we'll get to that point when the time comes, but I don't really see a sense to it right now. So I'm not getting any audio or video. So let's see if this IC here is getting any power, seeing if it's actually getting a signal and work backwards. So let's give it some power. And the pin out of it is right there. So 12 is VCC. Where's the scope? There you go. And it looks like... Oh, wait, nope, I'm sorry. I did that backwards. This should be 12 here. And so it's showing 5.03 volts. So that's good. All right, now RGB in should be 1. It says that it's 2, 3, and 4. So do we get any signal on that at all? Not really. All right, so I'm an idiot, and I forgot to push record, but all I really did was just I took this this card connector, this card slot off, cleaned up all the contacts, and just put it back on and resoldered it just to be on the, just to be on the safe side. Now, what we have on this board, so we replaced the oscillator, and we are now actually getting clock to the CPU and the RAM and everything else. We're getting clock throughout the board. So we replaced the oscillator, and we're actually getting a clock signal throughout the board now, which we weren't getting before. It's still not working, and there's really no change in the board, which means that even though this is getting a clock signal, these two CPUs here, they're not actually processing anything, or it doesn't seem to be. So let's take a look at the board. So we have these three chips here are essentially ASICs. They're designed and used only for this board, only for the Genesis, and I believe only for the VA3 boards. Other boards had similar chips, but I believe they were different chips. They were set up differently. So these are only used for this board, and you can only get them from a donor board. These cannot be purchased on the open market unless they're used. This here is a 68K Motorola CPU. It's actually, this one here is not a Motorola, but it's a Motorola compatible. It's the same thing. This here is a Z80 CPU. This is the RAM for the Z80, and this is the RAM for the 68K. Over here, you have the video processor with its RAM here. This is the sound chip, and I believe this one is just an audio amp. I could be wrong, but I believe that's just an audio amp. And this one here, this is just an op amp. So it's fairly simple. The layout is fairly simple. And generally what happens with these, from what I understand, is the capacitors fail, just like the Game Gears, and you're going to have all kinds of different problems. These capacitors, I've actually tested all of them, and they all come out good. And what I've done is just unsoldered one leg, lifted it off the board, tested them, and they seem to be coming out fine. These ones I have not tested, but they're just mostly for the video system, and that shouldn't really affect it too much. We should actually be getting activity on the board. If we hook up headphones to here, we should be getting audio out at the very least. We're not getting that. So let's take a look again at the readings that we're getting here. So off the 68K CPU, if we shut it off, turn it back on again. So it seems like that's our clock. And there's 5 volts. But the thing I noticed was, if you notice here, we're getting pretty much 5 volts on all the data pins, which doesn't sound right. We should be getting some type of data or some type of activity on there, and it's just a solid 5. So these pins are just locked on. They're not actually doing anything. So if we check the Z80 and see what it's doing, it's doing about the same thing. So it doesn't seem to really be processing anything. Everything is almost in a halt state, if you even want to call it that, because it's not even halted. It's just everything is just outputting. Everything is just on. So if we had just bad RAM, bad video RAM, we would at least be getting sound. So if we had bad video RAM up here, or a bad video processor, we would at least be getting sound, and we'd be able to hear the thing actually doing something, and we would actually be getting some data through these CPUs. Now here's the RAM. If we check the data pins on the RAM, it's the same exact thing. They're just positive. They're just active. They're not actually doing anything. So if it was one or the other, I would say it would be bad memory. So like let's say the Z80 was working just fine. We were getting sound, but we weren't getting any video. And the Motorola, or the 68K, is responsible for the video, at least processing of that, the graphics. I would say, you know, if it was doing it, I would say it was bad RAM. And if, you know, vice versa, if the motor, or if the Z80, and vice versa, if the Z80 was doing that, I would say, and if the Z80 was doing that, we wouldn't be getting anything to my knowledge. But I would be saying that it has bad RAM. However, because everything is kind of in a lock state, I'm actually wondering if one of these ASICs is bad. And if that's the case, I don't have a hot air gun to actually pull these off. I mean, I do, but it's one of these deals, and I'm really not interested in cooking the board. I've used that to pull chips off boards before. It does work. It's just super sketchy, and I really just don't want to risk it. So what I was thinking was this board actually may just become a parts board. I know this is kind of an anticlimactic ending. Let me know what you think. I do have replacement RAM for these, but that requires unsoldering them, and it is a pain in the butt to do. But I mean, I can try and pull this RAM off and replace it. I just don't think it's going to do anything, being that everything. This is to my knowledge, this is two separate systems, and both of which are locked up solid. So the fact that that's happening is making me think that it's something with one of these ASICs. I could be wrong, but that's just my thought. That's my theory. So let me know what you think. Again, I'm sorry. I know this is kind of anticlimactic, but you know, if anybody has any ideas, anybody has any thoughts, please let me know. I'll hold off on you know, trashing this or using it for parts until I hear from anybody. But that's kind of what I'm going with, and I'm thinking that this will be a good parts board, and it'll help keep other ones running. I do have some other parts boards, and maybe we can use parts from this one to get those ones running again, because apparently, like the one I have is missing a CPU, and I was told that it worked fine before the CPU was pulled. It was just used as a parts board. So maybe we can swap the CPU from this one onto that one. The only problem with that is whoever did the desoldering ripped up a lot of traces in the process, so we're going to have to do a little some creative soldering and redo those traces, but it can be done. So let me know what you think. I'll be back with more Genesis stuff. I do have some parts on the way. I'm going to be showing you how to do an S-video mod, and even get one. I want to overclock it. If you haven't already, subscribe. You'll be seeing that coming, and I promise those ones won't be as anticlimactic as this one, and talk to you later.